take care of their relatives. They are the informal caregivers who take care of their elderly parents or their children. Informal caregivers can be of any age. They can even be adolescents who have to mature abruptly and take up tough roles, or people in the twilight of their lives. And of course, we have a burden that is unequal. It falls on the shoulders of women mainly. It could be larger families or single-parent families in urban centers, in rural areas or remote areas, on islands. The informal caregivers are everybody. We are informal caregivers potentially, and this is not the description of a problem. It is a pillar of our society and economy. It's an invisible type of work that we take for granted. So we need continuous support for professional caregivers, recognition of their skills, what they offer. We need psychological support. We cannot allow them to bend under the burden of their own fatigue. We want this domain to be more attractive for young people. We cannot also leave aside those people who are undeclared and work in precarious conditions, people from third countries. And of course, we should not forget that informal caregivers never take a break. They have to quit their job or their dreams in order to take care of the people they love. And when they want to come back, the door is closed. So we ask for protection. We need people who can work even with teleworking, some more flexible working conditions, support of their mental health, and recognition of their skills, because these people actually gain some skills through this care, and this can be recognized in order for them to earn their living. So if you have to work and take care of somebody for so many years, you also need to have these years recognized for your pension and social security as well. And of course, we should not erase those years as if they have never existed. And we should support women who take up most of the burden, because care is a social responsibility and it is a responsibility for all of us.
Thank you so much. Can I give the floor to Mrs. Estaras Ferragut as co-rapporteur? You have the floor, madam.
Gracias, Presidente. Thank you very much, President, Commissioner. As we know, there's an increasing need for care, and care is extremely important for well-being, dignity and human rights, and it is women who disproportionately take the burden of informal care in particular. This affects their professional development, their income, their pensions. All of this perpetuates inequalities and limits the participation of women in society and in the economy. It has impacts on the pay gap, a 38% gap. Women spend around 17 hours more a week for non-paid care work. 6 years of their life on average. This care work is invisible, but they are the backbone of this care structure. Providing this care is undervalued. For professional carers, the working conditions are very precarious. It's physical, emotional work for very low salaries. So we need to place greater value on the care sector. It's a key sector when we look at elderly people or childcare, long-term care. It is important to recognise the key role of all these different types of care along people's lives. Access to care is a right. It should be something that is equitable, that is accessible for all, whether you're in outermost regions or islands. You can't get to an elderly age and simply not have access to this type of care. Member states need to correctly apply this Work-Life Balance Directive. It needs we need to have an evaluation of how this is being implemented. We need to really achieve this balance correctly so that women can have their proper place on the labour market. We also need to particularly look at non-professional care roles. A lot of women have to leave the labour market because they need to look after someone in their family that needs care. And of course, this has an impact on their future. And young people as well who becomes carers, we need to focus on them as well because their education, their well-being, their development, all of this is affected by their role as carers. We need to improve salaries for those providing this type of assistance and make these jobs more attractive in order to incentivize people to go into this sector. So we talk about a European statute for carers so that there's a single standard in place, that we can have this recognition across the member states, and that would reduce the inequalities between the different member states. It is, of course, important to have a special support for vulnerable families or single-parent families. And I'd like to thank my colleague Meliti for this very valuable cooperation over the last year to Renew, to the Socialists, to the Left, to all of the groups for working together on this file. We often have these carer roles linked to women who come from non-EU countries, so we need to make sure that we make these jobs more attractive to get EU nationals also interested in these jobs rather than sometimes irregular migrants. So we want to make sure that they are fair conditions and it's an attractive profession. You can use a number of different funds, the Recovery and Resilience Fund, the European Social Fund, and of course, we think the Commission's proposal for 2027 is extremely important. It's going to be our roadmap forward. So it is our responsibility to change that, and it's also in your hands as well. Thank you very much.
Grazie, onorevole. Prego.
Thank you. Ms. Minzatu, Vice President of the Commission.
I cannot express enough my gratitude for this important topic today and tomorrow. The care society, one that doesn't limit opportunities, but rather creates opportunities, and the gender gap that exists and needs to be addressed. So I will thank the Parliament for this debate. I will thank the two rapporteurs for their work on the report. And I want to underline the important challenges that require the right solutions to the measure of these important challenges. Of course, we see in the report how clear it is that the scale and persistency of the gender gap, care gap in Europe is present. Behind the gender care gap, however, we can also see an options gap. Because too many times, too many Europeans do not feel that they have real choices when it comes to their need to balance work, family responsibilities, and care responsibilities. For some women, for many women, they just have to do the math and realize that after they pay their child's daycare or a parent's care facilities, going to work just doesn't make financial sense for them. But choice can also work in other directions. Because I have never met a mother or father, for that matter, who did not wish that they had more time with their newborn before returning to work, or people who wanted to care personally for an elderly parent. And nobody should be penalized for that ambition and for that option and for this necessity. Of course, families across Europe have different traditions, have different care realities, and we are not here to tell people how they should organize their lives. But we do have a responsibility to make sure that people truly have choices and real access to the rights and resources that really make these choices possible. That is what equality actually looks like. And in practice, when it comes to addressing the gender care gap, it means making work more attractive, with higher salaries, with better working conditions. So in that spirit, We will continue to support, as was also mentioned here, the full implementation of the rules already driving the change, like the Minimum Wage Directive and the Work-Life Balance Directive. And the upcoming Quality Jobs Act will also be an opportunity to strengthen workers' rights, including in the care sector. This is why this is true for all workers, but even more for those 6.2 million people, and it is mostly women, who are employed as formal care workers. Their essential work too often goes unrecognized. And beyond work, it means having the social infrastructure that should be in place. High-quality childcare, long-term care that is both accessible and at the same time affordable. We are helping member states to invest in these areas. This is true, and this is thanks in big part to the cohesion policy, to the European Social Fund Plus, to the European Regional Development Fund, and the total amount is about 10 billion euros. And on top, around 15% of the estimated investment from the Next Generation EU is dedicated to education and childcare and health and long-term care support. We are also building on the 22 European Care Strategy, our recently presented social package, on strengthening the European Child Guarantee, and one of the key elements covered by the Child Guarantee is access to care and medical care, the roadmap for women's rights and our gender equality strategy, thus bringing together political action with member states together and learning from each other. Supported by dialogue with stakeholders, these will shape an ambitious European care deal that we want to present next year. The care deal will have a strong gender focus because this is the reality of the care sector. It will support a more equal sharing of responsibilities between women and men and promote fair employment in care jobs. Honourable members, a care society is one where care does not limit people's opportunities, as I've already mentioned. It is one where people have the support and have the freedom to choose how to live their lives. I thank you and look forward to the debates.
Grazie onorevole, iniziamo il giro.
Thank you so much. Let me start with our colleague, Ms. Nickel.
Thank you very much, President. You know what? Bill Clinton was not always right, but his famous slogan, "The economy is stupid," is very fitting now for our debate. Filling up the care gap is an act of justice to women, but it's also very good for our economy, because every day women throughout the world spend 16 billion hours on unpaid care services. Well, children, caring for the elderly, for the sick. If we were to price such work in some countries, it would exceed as much as 40% of GDP. It's more than industry, it's more than transport. Lack of pricing of such activity costs hundreds of billions of euros every year. Now, let me say something that should close this debate. If we were to fill up the care gap, we would create 300 million jobs throughout the world, and the GDP of the EU would grow by 3 billion euro. The care gap is not about justice to women. It's about filling the budget gap in all of Europe. Let's do it.
Grazie onorevole.
Thank you so much. Next speaker, Ms. Ravkovic.
Madame la Présidente, chers...
President, dear colleagues, as long as we rely on precarious or invisible jobs of women, we won't have equality. 70% of care workers are women, and most of them are precarious. These are very hard jobs. Very often they receive no recognition. And yet our society relies on them. Very often this is carried out after a working day. It's unpaid. 32 million women live like this in the European Union. 32 million of them working without any pay or recognition. 17 hours per week on average. They work less, they don't have careers or free time. Sometimes they give up their jobs to provide care for others. Then there's also cooking, households, etc. Some believe that that's just the natural role of women. We need to put an end to patriarchal submission of women. Some at the right of this room believe in this. But let me be very clear. Equality is a political priority for my group. It's not about the nature of women. There's no such thing. It's about fairness. We will not be submitted. We will fight to cast off these chains. We need a real European care strategy, major investment in the public sector and recognition for this kind of work. What's the far right doing? Well, they want to prioritize families, they say, but this means that women are doomed to invisibility and sacrifice. We've got an aging society. We need more and more care workers, and they're invisible. I hope that we will be able to give women the place in society they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next speaker, Ms. de la Pizzacarrion.
President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, the most natural act of a human being is to care. We cannot feel good about ourselves if somebody needs help. It is an instinct to help those around us, especially those who have particular needs. And that's what we should be mostly concerned about, rather than dealing with gender ideology, who talk about caring as if you were losing opportunities, as if someone who needs care is a burden for society. Caring, loving, that is our life. And what you need is a family perspective, support so that this can be done in a dignified way and have the social recognition. How does a parliament value a mother who wants to care for her children? They see it as a backsliding of women's rights. They see maternity as an obstacle, to the extent that abortion in this report is treated as a type of family planning. I hope this is not supported, because life is a gift. Thank you.
Grazie onorevole, prego onorevole Gemma.
Thank you so much. Next speaker, Ms. Gemma.
Presidente, Commissario.
President, Commissioner, every day we walk a path, a mountain path, with high heels. We can't run, we can't be distracted, we can't possibly fall. The only thing we can do is continue walking with love, with trouble, with difficulty. Nobody's taught us this, but it's the path of our child, and we're the only ones who are capable of guiding them. This is the story of Lutza. She tells us the reality of many women left alone in Europe. This is the way the dossier has been taken constructively. We want to focus on the role of the family and the questions of proximity. We have recognized and we value the skills and psychological support for those who are weakest and fragile, also home support. And then we also look at the decent and more dignified working conditions. But we need to get centralized instruments, and there are certain ideological postures that we do not share.
Devo, prego.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mrs. DeVos.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you very much.
Ačiū, ponė pirmininkė, ponė komisarė, gerbiami kolegos. Kas galvoja apie vaikus? Kas lydi pagyvenusius tėvus? Kas padeda tiems, kuriems reikia pagalbos?
Ce sont les femmes, encore, et cela a un prix sur leur carrière, sur leur salaire et plus tard sur leur retraite. Avec le vieillissement de la population, la demande de soins va augmenter fortement. Nous ne pouvons pas
Sorry, madam, for interrupting, but there is no translation in English.
No?
No. If you can start again. Sorry for asking this. You can verify if there is the translation. Thank you. Please, sorry.
Alors.
Thank you. Who will take care of children? Who will help an aging parent or somebody who's suffering? Who will step in if somebody needs help? In most cases, it's still women. And that has a price on their career, for their careers, for their earnings, and later for their pensions. With the aging of the population, the demand for care will increase strongly. We can't respond to that without having quality care, and making the sector attractive. We need to have we need to focus on the sector and having careers with prospects. Otherwise, the system will still rest on the same shoulders, and it is still women who will absorb the burden. Madam Commissioner, I welcome of the a care pact for next year. We have a responsibility, which means to share good practices and see what already works in the regions and which should be supported on a larger scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience. Mrs. Scuderi. Daniela is an employee. She worked 8 hours a day, but she had to ask for part-time to take care of her children and her father, who was ill. Now she works 18 hours a day, and 10 of those are unpaid. Maria is a migrant woman. She works 24 hours a day, 950 euro a month, 1 day off, lives at her workplace, and she can never get ill, she can never stray, and she can never complain, because otherwise she will lose her residence permit. This is a daily reality. Do you know where? In Europe, in our Europe of rights, where we allow this wild exploitation. Families are left alone, public services fall short of what we need, waiting lists are going up, and women are often the only ones that shoulder the responsibility of care. So they're exploited, they lose their job, and they cannot carry out their hobbies, explore their passions, and this is constant. That is why we want a European care deal. We want more public investment, more accessible services, rights and decent wages for those in the care sector. Thank you very much. Estela Galan.
Gracias, President.
Thank you very much. Thank you, President. Madam Commissioner, on whose shoulders do we actually place well-being in the Union? The Commission talks about competitiveness, but actually it's women, millions of women, who support life, and most of them do it free of charge, and they're women. And others do care jobs, but they're very poorly paid. Many are without rights. And we never talk about this, but there are many women who are able to enter the labour market because others from other countries have left their families behind in order to look after our children. Let's talk about that. Women are invaluable for the workforce, but also invisible. This is a question of inequality, gender, class, origin. The far right claims to defend the family, but they don't want to talk about who's providing care, who's cleaning, because that would completely demolish their false narrative. That is why Europe must recognise the value of our carers. We need labour rights, we need regulation in order to protect migrant worker women, like we've done in Spain, in fact. Care is not a female obligation, care is a collective duty. Thank you.
Madame Galan.
Thank you, Mrs. Galan. The next speaker is Mr. Bosdorf.
It's crazy what the proposals that are being made to close the gender pay gap. Illegal migrants will be legalized to care for our old people. The few children who still exist in the EU will be have outside care so that their parents can look after old people. There will be more abortions so that parents can avoid the stress of unwanted pregnancies. I'll tell you what this report means. Families will be weakened further and exploited more. Those who are now responsible for their own children will hand over these children or not have them at all, so that they can look after all those who have never had a family. It's a disgrace that, once again, the failed population policy of this EU is put on the backs of families. We roundly reject this report. Thank you.
Lisbeth Sommen.
Dank u, voorzitter, commissaris, collega's.
Thank you very much, President, Commissioner, dear colleagues. Every day, women get up earlier, they go to bed later, and they do that to do a type of work that's not really accounted for. It's not paid, and no recognition either for the labour that they do. Therefore, these duties are not shared out evenly. Women in my country spend, well, I think something like 9.5 more hours a week to look after these primary tasks, this care. But of course, this is inequality, not just in the private sphere, but also on the labour market. In Belgium, there are many, many women who work part-time, far more than men who work part-time. They are therefore in a position of weakness, vulnerability, less economic clout, and this generates social inequality. It's also, I think, an economic challenge for the Union as a whole. My dear colleagues, our society cannot actually function without this care being provided, but all too often the care is invisible, it's unpaid for, and it rests on the shoulders of women. And as long as that continues to be the case, we can't really talk about equality. We should invest into quality care, proper childcare, and we also want to provide health support and mental health support to these carers. We really need to carry out a root and branch reform here, I think. We can't just look away. We can't look away. We need to set up a system that, of course, provides for children, but also makes sure that women are in a position to play their role fully, and for everyone to take their responsibilities. There's also grandparents. Grandparents are just as important in this particular area, and they also deserve our support.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Blinkevičiūtė.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, dear Vice President of the Commission, ladies and gentlemen. When we are talking about progress towards a care society, we must acknowledge one fundamental truth. Today in Europe, the burden of care is still disproportionately on women's shoulders. Women are more likely to work part-time, they are more likely to interrupt their careers, face lower incomes and face the risk of poverty in old age, precisely because the public care services are not rightly compensated. Reducing the gender care gap is therefore not just a matter of equality. This is a matter of social justice, economic security and European competitiveness. If we want real change, declarations are not enough. Investments and binding commitments are needed. Firstly, we must ensure ambitious and stable funding for the European Child Guarantee. The S&D Group are clearly calling for a budget of at least 20 billion euros, so that no child in Europe is left without access to quality childcare, education, health services, and decent living conditions. Secondly, Europe needs a true care deal, the European care deal, and it must be based not on good intentions, but on clear commitments to the member states. We need accessible and quality childcare services, strengthening long-term care systems, decent working conditions and salaries for care sector workers, safe jobs, social security and upskilling opportunities in the care sector, better paid and equally accessible conditions for young workers who face difficulties in their labour space. We cannot speak about the quality care sector whereby its workers are facing burnout and insecure labour conditions. Thank you.
You have a request.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Blinkevičiūtė.
Mr. Teres. It's okay. Vous êtes calé sur la traduction?
Have you managed to get the interpretation channel?
Parfait.
Yeah, thank you so much. You were mentioning in your speech that you and your group, S&D, is pushing for gender equality between men and women. So you're using two terms that should describe objective realities, men and women. The problem is that your group, often in these debates, are claiming that a man who pretends to be a woman is a woman. Because according to the gender theory, gender is not an objective reality, but a social construct. So please define to us, do you want gender equality between a physical male and woman, or between a man who pretends to be a woman and a woman who's a biological woman? Thank you.
Vous pouvez répondre.
Well, that's you just confirm my thesis.
S'il vous plaît,
Please.
Thank you.
Blinkevičiūtė vous répondre.
Mrs. Blinkevičiūtė will answer.
Firstly, let me say that we, Social Democrats, are for equal opportunities, equal rights for all people, both men and women, and in all areas. Likewise, when today we are speaking about care, why just women have to take this responsibility? 90% of women, and you personally, cannot take care neither of your old parents, disabled people, nor your children. Why? That's why we, Social Democrats, are saying once again that there must be investments into those people who are working in the care sector, that conditions must be made for women to work equally and not just to sacrifice all their time and all their lives for care. Is this normal?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Mr. Terhes, you have the floor again.
Because you are just proving my point. Because if a man who pretends to be a woman in your eyes is a woman, samely, a woman who pretends to be a man is a man. So if a woman works 24/7, exactly as you rightly said, to care for other people, if that woman pretends to be a man, do we have gender equality? Yes or no? You cannot have it both ways, guys. It's either or.
On a compris votre question. Vous pouvez répondre.
We understood your question. You can answer.
No matter what I'd say, you'd always have your truth. What can I say? Sometimes it happens like this.
Je vais donner la parole.
Now, the next speaker is Mr. Shekeres.
Thank you very much, President. Honourable Commissioner. We believe that the family is the natural and primary fundamental unit when it comes to care, and we support families in this regard. We welcome the fact that the report recognises the invaluable and irreplaceable worth of 53 million informal carers, including pensioners. We also welcome the introduction of pension rights. I would like to emphasise that family policy and social policy are unambiguously a matter of national competence. They're not something that is decreed by Brussels through statute. We are not in favour of winding up institutional care for the elderly, nor are we in favour of carers being siphoned off to more wealthy economies from our countries, because this will create genuine care problems for us. We reject gender ideology, and we also reject a viewpoint whereby migration is the answer to our labour shortage when we could be employing workers from our own countries. So we had made a proposal to protect the competences of our member states, but we recognise that this was rejected by the majority. There's been a lot of ideological pressure. Therefore, we cannot support this report.
Thank you. Mrs. Wisniewska.
Dziękuję bardzo, panie przewodniczący, szanowni państwo.
Thank you very much, President. Ladies and gentlemen, Europe is turning into an elderly continent. 1 in 5 Europeans is over 65. And if we continue along this track, by 2050, the percentage will be even higher, and it will be a burden on our society, especially since it is women who shoulder most of the responsibility when it comes to care work. The care sector also is characterized by low wages. And that is why it's vital for us to adapt to European policy. We need family mainstreaming. We need a policy where we have family, children, and relatives at the heart of the policy. And we have to think about how we can make sure that there's proper pay.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, Madame Commissioner. Iedereen weet wat het is om stress te ervaren. Iedereen heeft.
Everybody knows. Everybody's had a difficult day at work, at school, or whatever. What happens when there is tension is work continues unendlessly in the private sphere. And the people want things to be done to the smallest detail. Women, therefore, get twice as much stress than men. Of course, care, childcare, and older people is important. It's not normal, though, that this gap between men and women is getting bigger. It's not normal that women do so much. In the trad wife and traditionalist narrative, which is passed on to young people, we find negative pictures. We have to continue fighting.
Mrs. Langenzieben.
Bei Kinderbetreuung.
Childcare, elderly care, children with a disability, whatever example you take, it's always women who provide the care and the support. So, you know, we talk about trad wives, beautiful posts on social media with millions of followers. It depicts it beautifully. It's not the reality, I'm afraid. Millions of hours that you work without pay, without support. 17 hours unpaid care every week for women. This work is so precious, so essential. And instead of rewarding it, the system actually punishes it. 25% pay gap, for instance, that is a consequence of the present situation. Now, an incentive for men to also step up to the plate? No incentive, zero incentive. We call for something of a different system with proper remuneration for this care. We don't need to exploit women for the work that they're doing currently. Instead, we need to recognize the value of that work, and we need to provide support. I think that, in a way, patriots are misusing this argument for their particular arguments, but we want something different. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kathleen Funchen.
Carers are the backbone of our community, the unsung heroes looking after some of the most vulnerable in our society, and yet are consistently left behind. As we know, women disproportionately take on those caring responsibilities. We need to see the care system as a public service rather than a private for-profit model or the unsaid expectation of women. The Irish government, like many other across Europe, needs to listen to carers and get rid of what we have in Ireland, which is a very unfair means test of the carers allowance. This means test excludes thousands of carers and results in many receiving reduced payments. Carers are putting in the hours and providing this vital care, but because they might be working part-time or their partner is working, they see much reduced payment, or indeed, in many instances, no payment at all. And unsurprisingly, but still disappointingly, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil MEPs voted against my amendment on ending this means test at committee level here. Carers deserve a lot better. We need to recognise our carers for the contribution they make to society. They need to be paid properly, and they deserve the same rights and protections as any other workers. Gurmaga Chair.
Merci beaucoup, cher collègue.
Thank you very much. Mr. Papadakis. You're talking about social care for families, while social care in Greece is doing very badly. People aren't paid properly, and this is because they have contracts linked to the community support framework that will soon end, and this means that working class families are going to be left in limbo. You have a plan. You're pouring money into the war machine, but you're putting childcare, the care of the elderly, of the ill, on the shoulders of the families. And then you talk about distributing the care burden. You're not providing public and free services so that the private sector can gain a lot of money by privatizing these services. When it comes to reconciling work and family life, means that women have to be like rubber bands and have no rights. That is why we have to have proper maternity protection and care. There have to be proper services, and all of this has to be provided by the state without the private sector NGOs being involved. Thank you. Mr. Do Nascimento Cabral.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Presidente, Sra. Comissária.
Thank you, President, Madam Commissioner. Europe. When it comes to looking after others, there are those who do a lot, and it should be something which is collective. Caring should be dignity. For many women, it means it affects their earnings, careers and pensions. Often it's not a choice, there's a lack of alternatives. It is lower pay, economic dependence, smaller pensions. It's a question of competitiveness. We need to have concrete responses. Workers need professional training and recognition and proper working conditions. Reconciling family and professional life should apply to women and men equally. And also we need to take into account distant, remote areas. When it comes to old peoples, there is a plan for those that shows that people can remain at home actively with dignity. Care is essential, but often it's distant from communities. Those who look after relatives must have rights, and people should be able to remain at home thanks to well-paid services. That's what we're looking for.
There are two blue card requests, one from João Oliveira, another from Mr. Youngblood. I'm going to give the floor to João Oliveira first, if you agree, of course.
Thank you, President. You said that there's a big gap when it comes to care guarantees for who need it, in those who are in a situation of dependence, people with disabilities. There's a need to guarantee services for those who need them. And the role of public services is key, with a comprehensive network, with quality services, with workers with higher salaries. I'd like to have your opinion on that. Thank you. Thank you for the question. I would like to praise Mrs. Maletti's reports and Mrs. Ferragut's report. Cohesion policy, you're quite right. We need to have local services close by so that people can stay in the regions. We have to fix these populations in the regions so that they can have development throughout the regions, and that's essential for those who are most vulnerable, who need them most. And that's why we want to defend these public services for those who need it most.
Thank you, Mr. Youngblood.
Ich werde auf Deutsch.
Thank you. I'll speak German. Thank you. I think we agree that everybody who provides care should be recognised, in particular women. There's one aspect here. I'm thinking of Germany. When we talk about repairs of homes, a German institute has found that 80% of these repairs are done voluntarily by men. Do you think that it isn't better that we have an overall family policy, rather looking at sub-segments within a family and proposing a measure for that?
Chers collègues, si vous avez compris la question, je vous laisse.
If you understood the question, please answer it.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Deputado. De facto.
Thank you very much. I didn't quite understand what you were driving at. The data is clear. We're talking about adults. We have to guarantee that these women won't renounce their rights as citizens. They should have proper pay for their care. They shouldn't be penalised for looking after those who need it most. That's why I defend this report by my colleagues.
Thank you very much. We can continue with our list of speakers. The next speaker is Mrs. Fritzon.
Herr Talman.
Thank you very much, President. Sometimes people say equality in Europe is something we've already achieved. But the truth is, we're far, far, far away from that society at this point where care, responsibility would be equally shared out. Women take on much more responsibility for children, for their home, for care, and this has an impact on their lives, on their income, on their pensions, and on their career opportunities as well. And therefore, this is not a private issue, a personal issue. It is a structural injustice in actual fact. We see parties on the right that would love to turn time back, turn the clock back. I mean, in Sweden, for instance, Christian Democrats would like to take away paternity leave, all those months for fathers, and this would be out of line with the EU rules, a minimum of 2 months. We can't build a future fair society by introducing the injustices that we had in the past. Equality deserves more than just words. We need action, and we need it now.
Dear colleague, Madame Fritzon, yes.
Mrs. Fritzon, you have a blue card.
Mr. Christian Terres, you accept?
Because I already know all your arguments against women. Thank you.
So you don't have... No. No, please. We have our rules. Nous avons nos règlements.
We have our rules of procedure. Your question hasn't been accepted. Now, Mathilde André has the floor. Individualism are destroying social links and social fabric, and yet a lot of people are working for care, 100 million people. Now, these people are working against individualism. And the text here has only one response, and that is to have gender budgeting and more migration, using the pretext that women do more care jobs and that many are foreign. There are other priorities, even though the text says that it recognizes the importance and social value of intergenerational care, but no measure will be taken to promote demography and to deal with the strong demand. Having a care society is, of course, glaringly obvious, but the fact that we need gender budgeting and migrants shows that you're not really tackling this urgent issue properly. Mrs. Gualmini.
Thank you. So, first of all, dear Commissioner, I think that you have noticed that basically all women have spoken in this kind of, debate, except for 3 courageous colleagues, and except for a little bit of show time of a colleague of ours whose question was really not so clear to me. But in any case, so the thing is that until, the issue of caregiving and the gender gap relating to that is only, a topic discussed by women and not an utmost priority in the policy agenda of political institutions, we will have a problem. We will have a problem because the second issue is that we know, of course, the statistics. So the diagnosis is very clear. We have more than 50 million of people providing informal, unrecognized care, but now it is the time to act. So first of all, we have to implement the directive on work and life balance, and we have to target, the next European budget for the gender gap in the caregiving. Thank you so much.
Elisabetta Gualmini.
Thank you. Ms. Gualmini.
Of course. Have a request for blue card. You okay? Yes. You don't accept. Okay. La demande n'est pas acceptée.
The request is not accepted.
Merci.
Très bien. Vous pouvez.
Okay, thank you. You can return to your seat. You can sit down, Mr. Terrace. Ms. Strolenberg.
When a man gets up at 5 and he hustles and grinds until 11 at night, we call him an entrepreneur, and he starts a podcast about it. When a woman does it, we say, Happy Mother's Day. In the Netherlands, compared to 20 years ago, women are doing 15 hours or more of paid work, compared to how much housework more men do per week. Well, 24 minutes. A man working full-time is called a provider. A woman who works, who cooks, who cleans, who takes care of the children, of the sick parents, who organizes the birthday parties and brings the children on time to swimming lessons, we call her a part-time worker. Culture has to change, but let's change the system first. Equal parental leave for fathers and mothers so that the division of care work is equal from the start. Affordable daycare so that raising a child is not seen as a mother's job by default. Paid or unpaid, rewarded or invisible, work is work. Let's make it fair.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Colleagues. Ms. Morace.
Presidente. Thank you very much, President. When we talked about care, we talk about invisible work, which is mostly on the shoulder of women. They have to work less and interrupt their careers or maybe give up a promotion to take care of the elderly and their children. And they pay for it in two ways, at the moment with lower salaries and in the future with lower pensions. Let's call a spade a spade. It's not normal for women to be able to have to give up their own time for something that should be provided by the state. Care is a pillar of our society. It's not something to put on the shoulders of families. If we want a care society, we need investment and proper leave, fair leave, because women should no longer be considered to be the providers of free welfare for our society. We have to change this model because a society that makes women shoulder the burden of care is more unfair and poorer. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Princi.
Grazie. Thank you very much, President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. When we talked about the role of women in informal care, we often think about the employment, pay and pension gap. But there's something we talk about less. Young caregivers in the EU, almost 1/4 of young people between 15 and 19 are actually carrying out care activities, quite a few hours per week. And young girls are already overrepresented in the data. This shows that the gender imbalance doesn't start during adulthood, but already during adolescence. There are thousands of young girls who spend less time socializing or studying or focusing on their own issues to make up for a care system that falls short of what we need, especially in areas with elderly people and where there's a lack of services. The gender care gap is not just about pay. It's about reduced training opportunities, and it also means that there are mental health issues because young girls are under pressure. We have to recognize young caregivers in our own policies by improving data collection and making sure that there's flexibility in education and training and providing psychological support, because a real and genuine care society has to step in before the inequalities are reflected in the labour market. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague. Ms. Galvez.
Thank you. I don't think anybody is questioning the importance of care, which is fundamental for the reproduction of our lives, for support, particularly for those people who could not manage in the absence of care or who could not live in dignity without that care, particularly for them. But when we ask the question, who does this work? What's the cost? Then suddenly things start changing a little bit. Because, what about the physical conditions, the labour conditions, the equality issue, economic policies? It needs to be addressed because otherwise this work is not recognised, not remunerated, and nobody wants to talk about that. So equality on the labour market, it's all well and good talking about competitiveness, but it's pointless if we don't take this point into account. So we are calling for a genuine pact, a genuine European care pact, a real deal with social services that are up to the mark. We also want to support carers, be they formal or informal. We want to make sure that their working conditions are dignified. There are so many who provide care informally for children, for others. This needs to be taken into account. Again, let us compare this to the discussion that we have on security and defence, and I think you'll get my point.
Thank you. Ms. Didier.
Monsieur le Président.
President, Madam Commissioner, the own initiative report that we're speaking on today says things clearly. Care professions, unlike millions of people who support our families, has to be properly recognised. I welcome what has been suggested by this text for social recognition and material support and proper assistance for carers. That's the first support network in our societies that should be recognised. Certain red lines shouldn't be crossed because technocratic interference doesn't belong in families. The freedom of organisation of parents and sovereignty of states should be fully respected. Equally, the care sector should be have higher salaries and not by new immigration flows. Given the requirements of dependence, we need to have concrete responses. That's why our delegation will make a choice to vote positively and pragmatically on this text. Thank you. Ms. Lukaczyjewska.
Przewodniczący, pani komisarz.
President, Commissioner. The provision of care in the European Union is one of the social and economic pillars that we need the most, but it's not always the most visible. We don't have proper pay, it takes effort, it takes time and a huge sense of responsibility. And the social security systems do not deal with it in the way that they should. We often talk about economic competitiveness and labour market problems. And at the same time, there are millions of women who need jobs but that have no support from social security. We can see how women account for for 75% of care providers in the EU. Almost 60% of women work in one of these sectors, and we can see how there's a huge vacuum, a huge void, and there is there is a big gap, a big pension gap, gender pay gap, and care is not distributed evenly between men and women, especially in far-flung regions where there might not be public transport, where there aren't enough care services, and that means that these women are even more excluded from the labour market. Investing in healthcare isn't a social cost. Women can remain active and help with social cohesion. We think that the work done by these carers is vital, and I'd like to thank my colleagues for these excellent proposals that we've been eagerly awaiting.
Thank you. Ms. Regner.
Dankeschön.
Thank you very much. Vice President, lower incomes, lower pensions, and wage trap. And that's the reality for those in the care sector. 80 to 90% of them are women. And what does it look like at home? We have unpaid care work, which is done by women after the work is before work. For many women, leisure time is just a change of shift. Many people reduce their working time and end their careers and to look after sick relatives and children. And most of these professions are underpaid. And so now, good implementation of the Wage Transparency Directive is essential. Same pay for equal work. And if you're we shouldn't pay lip service to care. It isn't a private matter for women. Care is a societal responsibility. Thank you. Ms. Moretti, the next speaker.
Alessandra, à présent.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you very much. Commissioner, think of those families that are around you. Who takes care of the children, the elderly, or those with disabilities? I am sure that you all are thinking of a woman. Yes, because it's women who bear a disproportionate burden of care. 65% of women with kids under 12 spend at least 5 hours a day taking care of them, as opposed to 26% of men. That means that women have to give up their work, their salary, which is of course, means less independence, and this has an impact on their career, pensions, and so on. There are millions of women that are excluded from the labour market because they are helping relatives, children, and parents. And then, of course, there's the women who are formal carers and are paid, but are not paid enough. We need better working conditions and especially decent pay. We want to reduce the gender care gap. We have to also help people reconcile work and private life. We have to make sure that jobs are available and that there is access to formal care services.
Mendia.
Thank you. Ms. Mendia.
President.
Thank you, President, Vice President. Hundreds and thousands of hours are spent by women on unremunerated care work in the world as a whole. 45% of the population in Europe actually provides unpaid for care work. Most of them are women. So the question arises, if women spent a big chunk of their lives providing care, why is it that care is perceived as something invisible and not of any value? And when we know that care is essential for our societies. So care should be perceived as what it really is. It's economic, it's social, it's a question of human rights. As long as we don't have affordable and accessible services, then we're basically pushing women into reducing their remunerated working time in order to look after their families. Also, we have an aging population in Europe. We need a guarantee for care in Europe, public services of great quality, and we need genuine protection for carers. If we want to have worthy working conditions for carers, we need to make sure that we protect our societies and our economies. Thank you.
Marie.
Thank you. Ms. Mai.
Ja, dank u wel, voorzitter. Mevrouw de commissaris.
Thank you, President. Madam Commissioner. Going to doctors, doing the laundry, giving to relatives, meals to prepare. Europe depends on unpaid work done by women. Very often, women work for free. Women earn less than men, and it's often 85% of informal care is done 85% by women. And our societies turn around it, depend on it. Women are invisible. All these systems wouldn't work without women because everything revolves around women. There are vulnerable people that women look after: children, aged people, elder people, people with disabilities. If that care didn't exist, our economies would cease to operate.
Come from Lucas Sipper. You okay? Lucas Sipper.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Vielen Dank.
Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank, Frau.
Thank you very much, colleague, Thank you for accepting the blue card. You said rightly that in care work, it's often done by women. It becomes problematic if we think about distributing assets in a divorce. If one of the partners, usually the man, has earned a lot more than the wife or other partner who's done this care work. Do you think that that should be harmonized throughout Europe in family law? Thank you.
Ja, dank u wel voor deze vraag. Ik denk dat het
Thank you for the question. I think it is essential to recognize what are the tasks done in the family within a household. You can see it in certain countries. In divorces, assets are not properly distributed. In other countries, the situation is different. I think we have to analyze that question because sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's women who earn more. Men do domestic chores. We have to look at these situations and analyze it.
Ah, Monsieur Sipper, c'est bon? Parfait.
That's the end of the exchange. Fine. Thank you. I will open the Catch the Eye procedure. First of all, Ms. Magzutis-Jaksak.
Szanowny Panie Przewodniczący, Szanowna Pani Komisarz. Powiedzmy jasno, luka...
Thank you very much. We need to be clear. There is a care gap, but it's not a private issue just for women. It's an economic issue, a social issue. Millions of women around Europe are doing some really important work, but they're not paid. They don't have social security. They're not recognized. And this is coming very late in the day, particularly when it comes to pensions. Greater risk of poverty, greater risk of financial dependence. And that's why this care gap, the wage gap, and the pension gap are all connected. You can't have a Europe that is fair if women continue to be penalized for what they do. We need a solution, a systemic solution. We need to have healthcare We need a system for that. We also need to support our carers. That should be the standard, so that women can also have another activity and that they're not, the slaves of their nearest and dearest. In the European Union, we should take into account time spent on care in our pension regimes, and we need to also support carers when they want to re-enter the labour market. Women should not be penalised economically for this.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez-Aguilar.
Commissioner Minzato, this debate is doing the right thing. It's focusing on the care economy from the point of view of the gender care gap, where there are employment and pay issues, and there has to be European harmonization from a tax point of view, employment, and the social dimension. But everything becomes worse when the care economy is on the shoulders of migrant women, because there are two options: marginalization and exclusion that leads to job exploitation, and the other option is regularization and recognizing what migrants contribute to care. That's what the Spanish government has done, because this makes work, it gives it dignity, and it deals with the gender care gap. And there's no doubt about the fact that we do need a European care deal, but we also need to take a fresh look at the situation, and we have to look at migrants differently. It shouldn't be about rejecting them, it should be about including them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Terrace.
Thank you. Dear Commissioner, this debate that you've listened to here shows clearly the danger that this narrative promoted by the European Commission poses to women, first of all. And when I say women, I mean biological women, not men who pretend to be women. When I wanted to take the floor and to ask questions to the leftists, they said they want equality. It doesn't matter if it's between men and women. Yes, it does matter, because the title of this debate is Addressing the Gender Care Gap. So there is a gender, there is a distinction between two entities, two groups, in this case between men and women. But if you can't legally define what a woman is, and if any man who claims to be a woman says he is a woman and pretends to have his rights recognized as a woman, how will you eliminate this disparity between men and women?
Merci beaucoup, Siegfried.
Thank you, Siegfried Fries. Something so important and valuable as care work is often unpaid and invisible. If we talk about what care means, it means looking after each other, and somebody needing us. It might be an old grandparent, somebody you know who needs you, a pupil who needs, who has with problems, and a small child who needs cares. Is this without value? No, it's wrong for us as a society. Perhaps family care can't be seen in our GDP figures. I think our society would be much poorer, and without all the care work that many of us do every day. It deserves more recognition than it gets today. Thank you for respecting your speaking time. Ms. Grappini.
Thank you, dear Commissioner, dear colleagues. Let's look reality in the face. Care services are not easy to provide. You need to take care of an elderly person, a child, a disabled person. This takes effort, but also dedication, vocation. The first thing that we should regulate is for these care services to be paid, for them not to be humiliating. Indeed, 50% of workers at least are women in this field. maybe this comes naturally. They are more sensitive, but we should take care of them. We should ensure that they have a proper pension. What happens with these care workers when they retire? They will not be able to live on what they make. We should treat gender equality rationally. We should put the right people in the right places. I've seen men providing excellent care services, but they need to be properly paid for that thing.
Thank you. Ms. Jakovic.
Hvala. Milijuni žena.
Thank you very much. Millions of women all over Europe bear the brunt of the unpaid care for elderly and children, and the system is taking this for granted. Situation for single mothers and informal caregivers is even worse. So this invisible work is the cause of lower wages for women, slower careers, and some smaller pensions and risk of poverty in old age. But this is also lack of thinking on the part of society, because this is a lost potential for the society. So we are asking for care for children to be more accessible and for men to take over their part, and also for care to be valued as work on the market and not as a private problem or a private burden to be borne by women.
Thank you. The Catch the Eye procedure is closed. Before giving the floor to the Commissioner, I would like to make one remark at the end of the debate. I had a list of 32 speakers. We had 3 men spoke, only, out of 32. Members can draw the conclusion. I think it's problematic. This debate has to do, above all, has to do with men, because men should be aware of their responsibilities when it comes to reducing the gaps between men and women. The question of equality applies to men and women. Madam Commissioner, I give you the floor.
Many thanks, Mr. President. Indeed, there is a problem. Thank you for the debate on such an important topic. And we refer to 2 categories of people that are involved in the care work. Yes, the formal care workers, whether they be men or women, and their working conditions, their salaries. In our member states, we have a diverse landscape, but in most situations, this is not the best paid job. This is not the ideal job. If you would go to a primary school, you will not hear 9 out of 10 children saying that they want to be carers in a way or another. Although it is a human-centric job, but it is difficult, it is complex, it requires a lot and needs to be rewarded in the same way. And yes, in this landscape of formal care workers, most are women. But it is much more, I would say, or please allow me to give this personal interpretation as well, about the informal care work. And I cannot not tell you that one of the main drivers of my work on this is the many generation of women in my own country that left so that they would take care of other people in other countries. And this was the promise, of the freedom of movement, of the freedom to work inside the European Union. And they went and they took care of people, of women that are, or people with disabilities that were not capacitated. And many times they didn't have their wages paid, their social insurances covered, their contributions for their pensions. And now they will retire, pension time will come, and they have no safety net. And many times it is about the woman, although she had the best results in high school or university and started her career, because she needed to be at home to take care of the first child, the second child, the third child, she could not, of course, have a career at the level of her talent. She had to interrupt once 2 times, 3 times, and of course, her career evolution was hampered, and in the end, the pension that she will get is also affected. So, what is the woman? The woman is for sure that person that works 12 months and gets the salary for 10 months. That woman is for sure that person that might work for an entire year, day and night, physical, emotional, mental labor, taking care of another person, and in the end will not be able to get a pension for it. It is a reality that we have a gender care gap in the care sector. It sounds so technical. It can be debated ideologically. It can be debated in the end also economically. But the important thing is that in Europe, where we uphold rights, this needs to be addressed. And with this motivation, next year we will present a European Care Deal. It will address the most important elements: working conditions, attractiveness of careers, accessibility of services. It is connected with what I mentioned in previous debate here in the plenary, the anti-poverty strategy and our work on a potential directive on activation. I will deploy all the resources that this Commission has so that we make an improvement that matters in the lives of people that care for others. This is a legacy that we need to leave behind. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Vice.
Thank you very much. Vice President Minzatu, I give the floor for the Rapporteur of Parliament, Ms. Meleti.
Thank you very much, President. Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, sooner or later, let's be honest, we'll all find ourselves in a position of caring for a loved one. And at some point, all of us might need others to take care of us. So this file isn't just about formal carers or informal carers. It is about us. And as we all heard, a lot of this care is invisible. It's taken for granted. It is undervalued. It isn't paid properly. And we do not appreciate it as much as we should. And we have a disproportionate burden on the shoulders of women. So this report says very clearly that this must change. Care isn't the responsibility of just some people or just women. We're saying that care is about social cohesion, dignity, and it is linked to the quality of our democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, there are times when politics has to remember why it is there. We're here to protect people, and care is the most humane form of care that society must show. And we have to make sure that this is a real social need. We cannot just talk about this for communication purposes, for party politicking or a partisan approach, because carers and those who need care are asking for support, dignity, proper policies and consistency. So with Rosa Estaras and all the shadow rapporteurs, we've worked hand in glove and we have achieved what I talked about in our report. So please vote in favor of the report. And there was an overwhelming majority during the vote in committee a few weeks ago. It doesn't mean we agree on everything, but there are moments when it is our duty to agree on substantial issues. And the crux of the matter here is that policies depend on actions. So let us vote in favor of this report so that we can support those who take care of us and others.
Rosa.
Thank you very much. I call Mrs. Rosa Estaras Ferragut, Rapporteur. Thank you very much, President. Commissioner, tomorrow is a big day. Tomorrow we'll have the opportunity to show the world that Europe is taking a step forward. We'll be supporting this report on care and the European Care Deal, which the Commission is going to introduce 2027. We need to be up to the task here. We can't have political conflict because of an amendment that we wanted to tweak here or there. No, we all have to leave aside that kind of approach. We've made a lot of compromises. We've decided to come together. In committee, we had almost unanimous support, And that is very much thanks to all the political groups that stood together, and that's what we want tomorrow. Tomorrow, when we leave this chamber, if we have a lot of votes in support of this report, and by the way, it's not a report by Mrs. Meleti or Mrs. Estaras, no, it's a European report. It's a report about carers, men and women. It's a report on human rights, on social justice. If we come out with a strong support for this report, we'll be that much stronger for European Care Deal for the year to come, definitely. It's time to change mindset. We need to raise awareness. We need to talk about this. You know, care is something that supports the world. And it's not something that appears on the payroll at all. And it's often women. Women will provide care, organise, support, be there. And that's why we need to change the situation, the reality. And we can only do that if all of us together support the deal, leave ideology aside. Let's come together, let's support human rights. It's the very credibility of this chamber, of this parliament that is at stake. Therefore, please, I'm reaching out to all the political groups, please support us, because if you support this, you're also supporting the future of thousands and thousands of men and women who are expecting us to be up to the job. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Sharon.
Thank you very much to the rapporteur. That concludes the debate, and the vote will take place tomorrow. In accordance with our order of business, we move on to a Commission statement on the need to reduce work-related fatalities. I want to draw your attention to the fact that there will be only one round of speakers. We have the speakers from each political group, and that's it. No further debate and no contributions by other members, backbenchers, or indeed no blue cards. That said, I give the floor to the Vice President of the Commission, Mrs. Minzato.